Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of Business Uncensored. It's not your normal business show. Look, I've got a few of these recorded now. Everyone just keeps getting better and better, kind of seeing the real side of what corporations, industry, entrepreneurs have and talk about it in a way. Well, the tagline that I want, and my producers keep telling me no, is this is where we say, fuck your feelings and talk about business the way it's supposed to be talked about. For some reason, they say that's not friendly, but I say, fuck your feelings, let's talk about business the way we want to talk about business. And today on the show, we have Kimberly Spencer. Now, I met Kimberly in a roundabout way. If anybody out there knows Janaid, however, I've heard it pronounced both ways, is that met up at PodFest, whatever. I had a client that reached out because we don't do bookings anymore. Said, hey, you want a booking? So I reached out to her. We started talking and immediately just clicked, right? This lady knows her business, knows her stuff. And if you're wanting to get your name out there, visibility, stuff like that, she is the person to talk to. Crownyourself.com and Communication Queens are two of her big businesses we're going to talk about today. So welcome to the show, Kimberly. How are we doing today?
I'm doing extraordinary. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to not be on a normal business show because in my official fancy bio, it says I realized that making your own mold is far better than conforming to somebody else's. So that's how I roll.
Oh yeah, I'm just a long line of broken molds. So and I get it. And in business, part of what made this show was back in the day. I was during COVID. I was in insurance. I did a lot of insurance marketing. Nobody had marketing budget in COVID, so I just went to selling insurance and had to do these insurance conventions, stuff like that. Not a smoker anymore, but I used to be. So I can bum a cigarette now and then, and I made more money, more deals, more connections out by that dumpster smoking than I ever made on that floor, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the side of business that I think people don't realize it's there. We get into networking, we get into all of these things, and it's all these plasticky, here's a business card, buy this thing, buy that thing. But the real people, the real humanity of business is really structured a lot like a dank ass meme group on Facebook.
But I love the meme groups. The meme groups just bring me so much joy. And that's actually I wrote about this in my book is if you can, there's a ton of inappropriate sexual puns inside of my book, Make Every Podcast Want You. And yes. It's because, and I'm if this makes you triggered or activated, as I say, then good. Because what this is actually doing, laughter and sexual innuendo or puns are actually the two greatest ways to convert short-term memory into long-term memory.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're all, as much as we want to say that we're not, we're all just filthy animals. And we can dress it up and we can do whatever we want, but we're all just that way. We like those things. And when we incorporate those things, a little quick story, and maybe Stephen, if you ask me for it, I'll give it to you. I was at PodFest in Orlando. And you said you were there too.
Yeah.
And so there was a stand-up open mic. Mm-hmm. At the very end. And I performed at it. And I used to be a stand-up comedian. I'm kind of a ringer, right? I used to tour, be professional. My first words when I went up there was I'm is anybody tired of hearing their own fucking voice yet? Because you guys are the most, I love the sound of my own voice. Here, listen to me. If this girl over here with a lisp can have a podcast, anybody can have a podcast. It was a 3.5 minute hard roast about podcasting.
Well done.
I got so much business out of that. Because people understood that is what people do. You can still be honest and a douchebag at the same time. Those things aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I had a post that I was I had so many podcasters say, thank you for saying this, where I said, our podcast that's associated with our coaching company, Crown Yourself, I said, we're no longer accepting guests that just want to empower women. It's 2024. We get this. Yes. Because now, I look at guests and when I get so many pitches, Ryan, that are I just want to empower women. I'm how specifically, what have you done that has actually empowered women? One of my favorite stories is one of our guests, Ashley Connell. She is the founder of the Prowess Project. Well, they actually train current or former caregivers to re-enter the workforce as online business managers and be the integrator to the visionary. That's how. That's an actual tangible, empowering women. Here's tools. Here's a skill set. Let's freaking go. But if you're just like I get so many pitches that are just like, I just want to empower women. I'm like, well, how have you done this? Now, some of these women, I will say, I'm like, whoever's pitching you, you got to have a conversation and let them know that you've already spoken at the UN and do burlesque dancing on the side. Like that should be a part of your pitch, not like this like overall vague empowering women term, because and I got so many podcasters saying, thank you for saying this. I 100% agree. We put and telling me all their new regulations that they have for their podcast. They're like, we put income caps on, like, you have to have empowered women by like, you have a 7-figure business, or, you have to show tangible results and be specific. And yeah, I did get flack though from that with some people that were like, well, you don't like empowering women. I was like, no. But
well, isn't that the crux of business, is all these stupid euphemisms? We learn to do it when we lie on resumes in the beginning. Like, yo, you want to empower women? Sure. I buy my wife new batteries. She's now newly empowered. Like that does not, but I can put that on a resume and I can make that fucking make sense. But it's not the thing. And I think in business, especially in podcasting, guests treat it like resumes, and they put these big broad strokes thing. And so my old show, Small Business Chronicles, which is what this show morphed into, I guarantee you that out of 121 guests that I had on that show, 86 of them were the same fucking person in a different skin. They come on, said the same things, did the same things. And I'm like, how are you different from every other show that I've done? Mm-hmm. And I started calling people out on it, and boom, this show was born. But I
love it. It's like the term visionary. Like I see that now all the time too, where I'm like, okay, well then please describe to me your vision. Like if you truly are a visionary, what does it look like? You can't I see these labels thrown around that are very generic and they feel very empowering, but there's no actual proof, backing, tangibility, and specifics to what it actually means.
Yeah. And like I said, it goes back to that line on a resume. Mm-hmm. I cultivated environmental practices to take the company into a cleaner thing. Yeah, sure. I took the trash out twice a fucking week. It's, but it's the same thing in like as podcasts. Let's kind of segue into this podcasting. Let's really hard go after podcasting here. Is that a lot of people on guesting, because this is where you really shine. Yeah. A lot of people are misusing the way that they guests, the way and how they do it, because they're just happy to be there. It's like the first time, never mind. But you're just happy to be there, right? And you or you're a podcast and you're just happy people want to be on your show. Mm-hmm. You don't realize it's just a whole bunch of the same person or personality flipping between podcast shows. And that's why people don't get results out of guesting or get results out of the show. So you focus on making guesting count. So tell us a little bit and give us a little bit of information about how that works and what we're doing wrong out there, guesting podcasts the way that we are.
Well, you alluded to it when you held yourself back from saying what you were going to say. And I'm pretty direct with it, is that most people treat podcast guesting like a one-night stand.
Yes.
Versus actually building a quality relationship. So if you think about like a podcast interview, right? We're sharing this time together. We're getting to know each other. We're getting to experience the vibe, the feeling, the repartee, the rapport. And after that, most people are just like, thanks for the podcast interview. Bye. And it reminds me of like Miranda in Sex and the City, which was like, thanks for the sex. Bye. Because it's like, it's not actually developing that relationship. But like, that's why I loved with you, like you were like, yeah, how can we work together? How can we do business together? How can we cross promote? And I was like, yes, this is my person, because there is this standard of reciprocity. And when you approach podcast guesting, not from your ego, because your ego is like, make me visible, show me to all the world, versus you approach it with reciprocity, generosity, and actually the idea of building a relationship, you're going to get so much business, because podcasters are constantly up-leveling your circle. And it's like business and personal development 101, that you are like the 5 people that you most surround yourself with. Well, if you're choosing to surround one of those persons, if one of those people in your 5 is constantly up-leveling their circle with who they surround themselves with, because they're getting more high caliber people on their show, that's a person to have in your circle. And so cultivating and building that relationship, not based on what can they give you, but what can you give them? Like, what can you do for them? How can you contribute to their success? How can you add value to their life and to their business and to building a quality relationship? Like, it's like my favorite marketer on the planet, Joe Polish's book, What's in It for Them? It's like really looking at what's in it for the podcaster beyond the scope of the podcast. And that's why one of the things that I say is, like, most podcasters, the number one problem that they have with their show is monetization. Like, most podcasters, that's one of the top problems that they struggle with. So great. If you're a business owner and you have an affiliate program, invite the podcaster to join in. That allows you to track if your podcast is getting clicks, downloads, hits, because it allows you to track on your end, the back end, to see how many people are actually opting in from the show. So it allows you to track how strong the podcast was for you and your brand. But it also, let's say a podcaster, you generate a sale. Like, I paid my husband $3,000 in affiliate commissions because I was on his podcast. It was a super tiny podcast. It's called the Mind Scrambler podcast. And it was a small podcast when I was in his first 10 episodes, but I always joke that my ideal coaching client is like the Gen Xer husband, like my Gen X husband, and who's been in business, who's had success. And like, that's who I've worked with for years. And so I generated a $30,000 coaching contract from his podcast. So I paid him.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think that's one thing. So in my business, Titan Media Works, it is that, we produce podcasts. We produce 27 shows right now. It's crazy. It's whatever. But I think one of the biggest conversations that we have when we're setting up podcasts, when we're doing things at expectations, right, is that they want to be famous or have a million. And I'm like, then be famous before you ever start a podcast. That is not what's going to happen on your podcast. We built this entire company of 6 of us sitting down, inventing podcasts and pitching podcast services to the guests, building relationships. Man, some of these shows have 6 views and we made thousands of dollars off of them because we focus on the guest, you focus on the relationship, you focus on the networking aspect, and it serves its purpose. And then you start tooling the other things, the visibility. Who is that person I'm talking to? Who does that connection make? Who does that whatever? And if you don't take that in consideration, you're just doing it wrong, period.
Mm-hmm. And this is how we track, like with our clients, we track, are you generating business post podcast interview? We literally have a full like Airbnb Uber style review after our clients go on podcasts. And this is how we see they're constantly getting referrals. They're constantly getting referrals, business and clients, even before the podcast distributes. And I mean, I had a conversation with one woman who was looking at our agency. She was a new coach. And she was like, I don't know if I like really need your services because like I did 40 interviews last month. And I was like, cool. What's the ROI that you got from 40 hours of your time?
Yes.
And she was like, what? And it just the full blank stare. And I was like, yeah, well, if you're putting energy and effort into, getting booked on podcasts, like what is the return of your investment? Yeah, on your money, but also on your time. Like, if anything, getting stuck in Australia during the pandemic taught me, and losing 3 family members and 2 family friends within the span of 1 year while still having a child and growing my coaching business 150% thanks to podcast guesting, taught me was the value of time. It was how precious our time on this planet is, how nothing is guaranteed. And especially as a business owner and as the actual leader of the vision of the company that you are beating the drum of of purpose, then your time is so deeply valuable. And who are you spending it with?
1,000%. And kind of to bounce back to what we do as a production company, as a whatever, you're buying that time back. A lot of people pull their nose up like, why do I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. I tell you right now that doing these things is buying your time back. If you're wanting to do a podcast or guest or do these things, there's so much more bullshit that goes on after you do the show. They're going to send you clips. You're going to talk. You're going to network. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. People like me and you help navigate this space. Now, this podcasting space is full, don't come at me, of amateur people that don't do it right. Right. Mm-hmm. And feel like, no, I can do it on my own. I can do it on my own. And that's great. And there's a whole network of you guys out there, and enjoy that, doing 40 podcasts a month for a sale or 2. It's people are very undervaluing how to navigate this space.
100%. It's And yet it's one of the fastest growing and best spaces to be in. 42% of millennial podcast listeners report purchasing from a podcast host recommendation.
Yeah.
So it's the highest market of educated and affluent individuals. It trumps LinkedIn for the percentage of people who are making a medium to high level of income. So if you want to get in front of, if you're a business owner and you're like, I would like to smartly leverage my time and get on a podcast that has a 20-minute retention rate versus a 1.2 seconds of an Instagram reel, then not saying there's anything wrong with your Instagram reels, but like 1.2 seconds is the average, or 1.7 seconds, sorry. Then going on podcasts is one of the most solid strategies to generate and build a quality audience.
Yes, and your reach, your circle of influences, your things of that, and you bring up something that generationally is so weird because I'm 46, so I've seen trends come and go, things, and I'm getting to that to see it. But then when you see upper level Gen X, Boomers, stuff like that, then how Millennials, then how Gen Z, then Gen Alpha, how they all purchase things differently, right? They all do things differently. So podcasting, you're right, is in that you're going to catch some of the Gen X, you're going to catch all of the Millennials, and that's where they live. And if we know economics, we know when you're a kid, you don't have any fucking money. Your parents have all the money. Then you get into that teenage, that 18 to 25, you ain't got no money. You're just trying to live. But 25 up, 25 to 45, that's where all the money lives.
Yep.
That's where.
I mean, the millennial demographic is about to become the wealthiest demographic ever because of boomers, no offense, sorry if you're a boomer, but like passing away. And so millennials are about to inherit also a ton of money as well, in addition to the work of their own businesses of what they're already creating.
1,000%. And podcast is where these people live. Now, don't get me wrong. I do a lot of Instagram, TikTok, those things. But the way that we do it is that your show, it is such a weird dynamic. I'm just in the middle of recording this video set about podcasting. And it is so weird how the change and evolution of podcasts. I started podcasting in 2010 as my picture falls off the wall. I started podcasting.
Talk about a mic drop.
I started that old thing. I started podcasting in 2010, and it was, you had a board and a mic, and you were basically the little brother of radio and some side of weird cousin to audiobooks. But anyway, you're still, trying to do this. But then as it goes up, video and YouTube, now video podcasts are a big thing. And then TikTok shorts and TikTok and reels and all this come along. Now we do shows now that we record the 30-minute show just for about 5 good bites to get on there. Yeah. And that's where we're making the money, and that's where we're selling. So this evolution is crazy. So if your antiquated idea of a podcast is just 4 librarians in a room talking about something, you're wrong. Like it has grown, and that podcast word is so hard to define at this time but it is one of the strongest, biggest, fattest marketing tools out there.
Yeah. And especially because you can then, like, I think as a CEO, and this is what I've trained my coaching clients on for years, is the 1 to 3 strategy. So you look at how can you do one thing and leverage it 3 different ways. So I know that the podcast, by just being on this podcast, that's one, it's a visibility, it's exposure to your audience. 2, I have the relationship with you that we're building and that we're, co-collaborating and referring cross business. I have 3, I have repurposing this podcast into shorts, reels, etc. 4, I can add this podcast into our email funnel for our agency to be like, here's why you need to listen to podcasts, because every one of those funnel pieces are podcasts, which then, and 4, I have automatic social proof because I'm not the one trying to convince my audience now. I'm having to work half as hard because you're the one who's doing the convincing and then bring me on as the expert. And that's called, in racing, it's called drafting. So when you think of drafting, like I always think of the scene from Cars 3, simply because I watched that movie I don't know how many times with my 4-year-old in Australia. And there's a scene where she's like, the race car is like drafting on the lead guy, Jackson Storm's butt. And she's just like, suddenly just comes out of nowhere. And he's like, who's this? And she's like, just drafting on your butt. She goes off to win the race, because when you're drafting, you don't have to work as hard. You don't have to exert as much energy as the person who's leading the podcast. So you get to work half as hard and get the visibility benefit and get social proof and leverage it for your email funnels and leverage it for, there's at least 5 ways that you can benefit from this. So for any CEO, like podcast guesting is a no-brainer.
Yeah, you just have to be careful which podcast you go on, 100%. What you do, and how you do that, because it can be a monumental time suck as well.
Yes, and 90% aren't worth your time.
Yeah, and I'm going to say something that I'm going to get some shit for, but
it's okay. Let's play.
My headphones just died. Hold on, because I can't hear you, and we'll pick right back up there. I'm going to go back to the wired ones because this is fucking bullshit. Double check my settings now. Yeah, I don't get why it does this. All right, yep, you're there.
That's why I don't use Bluetooth. I just old-fashioned.
I know. I'm going to go back to them. These work. So I do, because I have got my point. We'll talk about that later, but I do a couple live shows here local, and I use these because I'm running between stations and doing whatever. Yeah. So they work for that. Anyway, so I'm going to say something I'm going to catch a lot of shit for. If I go on a podcast and it's a Zoom link, I just refuse to go.
What?
Yeah. I have not ever been on a Zoom cast, right? That the final product was decent. That the content might be good, but Zoom truncates the audio. It sounds bad. You don't get dynamic editing. And it just, I've got to the point of, no, I'm not, that's cool. We got StreamYard, we got Riverside, we got local recording, we got in studio. We've got 76 other better options. And I'm just figuring, if you're recording podcasts on Zoom, let me guess, you record your podcast on Zoom.
I do. I record 2 top podcasts on Zoom, and what I love is, like, we leverage Podcastle AI for editing, and so it's so good for, I mean, it fits with our branding, right? Crown yourself communication queens, and now we have castles. So we get to put it inside the castle and then apply magic dust to it, and then it cleans it up. It's amazing.
Okay, well, maybe there's a reason, but okay, so let me defend my point after I put my foot in my mouth, right? That I'm sure if you care about your podcast, there's ways to do it on Zoom to make it look okay.
Yes,
but
and
how many
tips on how to do that?
How many Zoomcasts have you been on that you get this angle? They're not even using any sort of microphone. You get on there and it's echoey. It's bad. They got up nose. They've got dial-up internet, and no matter what you do, you know that the product that you're going to be associated with is just going to be bad. How many?
I would actually say it's not as many because of our vetting process.
Okay, so you're the exception.
So we have a vetting process where we I don't go on, or I don't submit my clients for any podcast that has less than 5 reviews, that has less than 30 episodes. There are some exceptions that I'll make to that. Like one of our podcasts that we've submitted to multiple times. I know she's a friend of mine, and I know she's built a $22 million company. So I have no problem. Like, yeah, you're in your first season of a podcast, but I know you're a pro. And then we make sure that they also have produce every 90 days. And that I call them their basic bitch rules. Like, those basic rules will cut out all of the one, for the most part. I mean, maybe I've been on maybe 5 to 10% of the Zoomcasts that actually like have like some, but 5 to 10%. And still, some of those have generated revenue and clients. So
And I mean, at the end of the day, as long as they generate that revenue, it's great. But you got to understand, like, what I do for a living is make things look pretty. And and so if I'm coming on a podcast and I'm trying to say, hey, production is important, and I'm a little screen on a potato, I don't think that fits with my brand, right?
Yes, and I can understand that from your
right.
branding perspective.
And yeah, if you can pull it off and do it right, that's great. It's just, in my experience, that's not the greatest platform to record a podcast on.
It's not the greatest, but it's a really convenient platform for someone who values getting it done, and like who can value production and the production of just getting it done and the consistency, rather than switching to something that maybe a higher ticket like Riverside or something like that. Or, the thing that drives me crazy with StreamYard is like the link right before. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone on podcasts and I'm like digging through my inbox because I've been in back-to-back meetings and I'm like, okay, it's a StreamYard podcast, because our agency, we let our clients know, like, is this recording on Zoom? Is it recording on StreamYard? Is it recording on Riverside? And I loved what you did, Ryan. Like, you added the link into the calendar. That's the best, because when I can just go into my calendar and click it, because then if I go into my inbox, I don't go into my inbox into the afternoon. And so by the time the afternoon hits, I'm like,
oh yeah. No, we're pros at this.
Respond to. Yeah, you guys got this.
Yeah, no, our company has produced 742 podcasts in the last year.
Yeah.
And so we use StreamYard exclusively. Not that it's the best. Trust me. It's StreamYard. If you're watching, if you don't fix that fucking single link thing for every stupid thing, I'm gonna. But no, it works because we buy a bigger corporate account. Everybody can flow in. All of our editors have access to everything, so it's great. So we use it for that. But no, we've perfected it. That literally the day before you add the link to the calendar.
Yes.
Right? The day before you add the link to the calendar, it sends them a reminder. It sends them the link. All of the things are in there. All you got to do is Outlook, edit, add, run. And it's perfect.
Yeah. It streamlines the process. Like, and that's the problem that I see with most people who guest and most people who podcast, is they have no process.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's 1,000%.